Welcome in everybody. Today I'm bringing you a special video. I have just cleared Heroic Wander in completion. This is a little dialogue at the end of the Uichusoph fight. Lif deals a final blow. And the little player MC gets some action with it as well. And Lif's just like, I had amnesia. I didn't remember that I created this thing. Seems like a pretty important thing to forget, but, you know, just amnesia things. And Uichusoph is just like, yeah, I'm gonna come with you guys. Well, that'll just be fun for me to have another Celestial to use. Ooh. Alright, so now we're jumping into the post credits for Heroic Wander. All of my teams are going to show up in times as well. I will be going over all these realms and all the teams that I used at a later date. I can go over some basics for now, like who are my most common people used. I'll probably put it all into a spreadsheet and try to get that information out sooner than later. But do not worry, I will be going through each realm and going over team builds and solutions for other accounts. The hardest two realms for me by far was Muspelheim for the beasts and the space between worlds for the Celestials. I could kill Filzius and Managarm with the same team, but it was hard to find a solution for both that worked. Reneka was pretty tricky, having to ignore all counterattacks and get through her water ring healing. And I've gotten so much help from people on my Discord about Uichusoph that I was able to clear her within 4 attempts. But I already had everything that I needed on my account ready to go, I just had to put it all in the right way. Yeah, that looks good up there. Yay. And now I will showcase off Uichusoph's kit. My brain just likes to say Uichi Soft because it's like Microsoft, but Anyway, just get her max orb and leveled up real quick, and then I'll go over the kit. Ranged airborne celestial female of the dark type. Her action skill has a self counterattack, feint, grace, fortify, all ally divine aid, quick, frenzy stone, scan, overpower, all enemy brainwash, poison, unmitigatable damage, regular black hole, high field, resist all, combat ruler, 15% airborne and grounded, and all allied celestials 50% stats up. Her field is Russell Hog field. She gets a conceal like stealth. She's not able to be targeted by enemy effects. Her enlightenment is aggressive undead, gives herself uplift, tempered fleetfoot, and immortal and a skill gauge opener. Her Primus level 6 adds on extra status ailments to be removed, and then extra effects. Alright, so we have Purified Heroic Wander and Total Completion, and let's go over the fight itself, the team comp I used, and why. So the boss form of Uichusoph is going to look a little different than the one that you get. She's neutral to all elements. Her action skill gives her attack damage, counter attack, a feint, and then all element resist up, which basically just stops your damage unless you can shred that element resist again with somebody's action skill, for example. She deals unmitigatable damage that also ignores defenses, and she'll threaten your party with erode on the highest damage dealers. Not only that, she'll hit everybody for a good chunk of damage and attempt to brainwash and poison them. So ideally, if you are Omega, you will just not be brainwashed or poisoned and ignore that. If you hit her with magic damage that it does not ignore counterattack, she will start to skill gauge accelerate herself and keep cycling this ability over and over. And if you do not have a sure shot to ignore her feint, she will also be generating skill gauge, so you definitely need to have an all ally sure shot brought on the team that's consistently kept up. Now she has 2 auto skills. I'm assuming that the first one is on her first HP bar and the second auto skills for the second. She's the only Heroic Wanderer boss that has 2 HP bars instead of just 1. The auto skill on the first HP bar is just going to be dealing more unmitigatable damage and attempting to reduce your all stats. So it'd be a great idea to have a stat debuff nullify so you can counter that. And your buffs will be shortened by ill omen. So bringing a boon to counter that is very effective. You hopefully even have more than 1 boon. If you have 2 boons, you can counter the ill omen and still get an extra turn on your buffs. And you can ignore the skill gauge down if you bring a skill gauge down nullified. So there's a lot of things to look out for. And she will be generating her own skill gauge up as well during every auto skill. Now on the second health bar, she turns to more offensive and will attempt to CC you with all the new shot CCs. And the second HP bar will take a lot longer because you will not be able to have stat buffs. Your buffs will be nullified. Now as far as her passives, this is all she gets. There are no fields to worry about in this fight. So these are the things you cannot do to her. You cannot skill gauge down her, so stop her acceleration at all. The only things you can do to mitigate that is to have sure shot up so you don't proc her feint acceleration, and to ignore counterattacks with your attack damage to stop that acceleration. She cannot have her own stats debuffed, so you will not be shredding her defenses. She has uplift, so the longer the fight goes on, the stronger she's gonna get. It's kind of like a soft berserk mechanic, if anyone knows what I'm talking about there. She has constant tempered, so she'll also be taking reduced damage from everything you do. She gives herself divine wings, which only allows her to accelerate her skill gauge gain more. At least this though, once she goes through the 5th activation, it'll get reset, but it'll keep stacking up again after that. So this is a constant thing to worry about. Once she does the action skill the 3rd time, the 4th and 5th ones are going to come much faster because of divine wings. And then she also has permanent quick, which you cannot stop, so she'll be going through her auto skills very quickly. But that's it, that's the entire fight. If you can just bring enough damage, you can do it. Literally the only tip is to attack full force, and we'll go through how you do that, or at least how I did that. On the team building page, there is no ranked for this fight, for heroes or gear, so you are on your own team building. Okay, so let's get through my composition, and you will start to see how to build your own. I attempted a lot of things. My first attempt was trying Asgard double buff, which used Yggdrasil, and PDL giving me the double Asgard buff, but this damage was not enough. Splitting between light and earth was not efficient. It was not worth it to have the extra all stats. Now I believe I actually tried with P-Rove here, so would this team work with Lif if I got an Embolden back in my party? Maybe. Maybe I could retry this party with Lif and it might work with double buffs and Embolden, because bringing back Yggdrasil gives me that range row amp again. How about I just test it out real quick so I can see? I'll do it off camera and jump back in. Yeah, even with Embolden, this team was only able to get the second health bar down to about half. As you can see, it's kind of awkward because, yeah, PDL does good damage on her own, but what I'm about to show you with better light stacking makes Lift do far more damage. So let's get back into that. Alright, sorry, I probably should have been talking about it on the proper page to begin with, but this was the team that I actually cleared with. So let's go over why it works and why what I just tried doesn't work, and you should probably be focusing on stacking one element over than focusing on progenitor party leader buffs. So although this team only gets one layer of Asgard's buffs, it performs much better because of the light buff stacking. So in regards to my amps, I do not cover a ranged row amp here at all, but it works out because Parfait here covers female amp to 20%, which is just good enough. If you have all ally 30%, 40, 50%, that'd be much better. But since Parfait was just available from the hero tickets from the community event, this collab, I was able to get her to A5 with the dupes that I already had. And her A5 ascension conditions let you take a lot of good stuff at once, like damage up to dark enemies. And honestly, here's the deal with Parfait. Wait, how do you see what ascension is required for a certain skill? How do I look at that? Let's see if we can find out. No, of course, because the encyclopedia will never work. Maybe if I look on another account's Parfait that doesn't have red A5, I can see. She's actually my only A5 on my main, I believe. Alright, so starting over on the Parfait section, in order to get the most effectiveness out of her for this fight, she has to be A4. A4 allows you to get the two things that actually do anything on this fight, which is the all-ally light ring at A3 and the all-ally damage up 40% against dark enemies at A4. So if your Parfait is not at A4, you're not going to be able to do exactly what she's able to do here on my team. The rest of these things are just irrelevant because you can't stat debuff her, and her holy chain doesn't hit celestial. So it's not like any of the other ones are actually doing anything. You at least need A3 for the all-ally light ring for sure though. Or you can cover it on another. You still might be able to get away with it because you could cover light ring on somebody else, and you can cover damage up to dark on somebody else as well, and I'll show you who that could be. But because of the passives and the all-ally component of her action skill alone, she brings more to the table for this light team than any other that I've tried. Even a gold Phoenix and a gold integrated Lift don't have the team output this much damage. It's actually kind of crazy. And she's the only way I can cover female amp on a full light team. So I tried Phoenix as well on another team to get another light element hero that can cover all ally female amp, but she did not work as well. And Lif only gives 30% female amp to herself over Parfait's 20. Before moving on from the gender amp coverage, I also like to note that on my Lofin, I have the Elucia's hair ornament, which means at least for the first 5 turns of the battle, plus any boon turns that I can get on this, instead of Parfait's 20%, she's getting 30% damage up to females, and that's a big deal. Lofin herself is a booner, and Vindicator Senna also has an all-ally boon. So I have 2 boons on the team. I counteract Uichusoph's Ill Omen with an extra boon. That way I'm potentially able to keep the 30% female killer from Elucia's hair ornament much longer than the first 5 turns of the battle. If that ever falls off, then she reverts back down to Parfait's 20% amp. Those openers and constants do not stack like that. The only openers and constants that stack are flat stats, like attack, mattack, etc. Damage up components like that do not stack. They only apply the highest value or the value with the longer duration that overrides it. Alright, so getting back into the nitty gritty. Now that I know I don't have a range row amp, I have all ally 20% female coverage, Lif gives herself 30, and Lofin starts the battle with 30% and can boon it potentially longer. What is my damage up to dark? I've got that covered pretty dang well. So the coverage is very strong because of A4 Parfait. We just went over that fact. So she's going to give, every time she action skills, that means the team has 3 turns of 40% dark up, which is also boonable. Lofen herself. Alright, just to keep in mind for Lofen specifically, she gets her all ally boon at A1, so even if you've only pulled 1 copy of her, you can get that boon. She gets the all ally light resonance at A2. She gets her own 30% damage up to dark element enemies at A3. And beyond that, if you had her at A4, you could get a light element resist shred. And then ideally at A5, if you have an A5 Lofen, you should be running the all ally embolden, because then you can have her cover embolden as well. You wouldn't need lift. So my Lofen being in A3, she gets the boon, she gets the light resonance, and she gets the damage up to dark element enemies. But Parfait's overrides this every time she applies the action skill, which brings it up to 40% for all allies. If that ever falls off or Parfait doesn't get an action skill quick enough, it would revert down to the 30% that's provided from Lofen or the other 2 in the party. That being said, Vindicator Senna always applies her own 30%, so I usually have solid coverage of damage up to dark element enemies. Vindicator Senna is also insanely important because she is my all ally sure shot on this party after I dropped PDL to go full light, and you have to have the sure shot. You cannot let Uichusoph be getting skill gauge from her feint and not hitting abilities and skills. Lastly, Tea House Waitress Elm also has her own damage up 30% against dark element enemies, so I have that buff covered very well. And then Tea House Elm brings the agitation dark, which actually, I take that back. Uichusoph's damage is neutral, it's non-elemental, so you do not get the effects of agitation dark on this fight. Good to note that. We also need an airborne coverage, which is why I originally brought Parallel Rovaria, but in lieu of that, I couldn't find one on an all ally passive, so I just covered that on accessories instead. So I have Lif, I gave her own Crimson Snake God Ring to make sure she always has 30% up to airborne. Parfait is actually missing an airborne amp unless I have it covered from something else. Tea House Elm's airborne amp is 25%. Serena's Black Rank Plate is just really good because the all stats and extra stuff as well. Vindicator Senna, I gave her 30% through Ren's hair accessory, very strong. And Lofen also has a Ren's hair accessory to give 30% airborne. So everybody except Parfait has 30% airborne, so I could probably fix that and have her do a little bit more damage. And moving on to the next thing, you need light element damage up. So you need damage up to dark enemies, and then you need your own light element damage up. But as I just went through Vindicator Senna, she has all ally 30% light damage up, which means the midday testaments are actually a wasted accessory slot. So instead, I could be giving her airborne coverage, which I definitely need to do. I'll find it something on somewhere, sometime, somehow. We'll give her another Crimson Snake God Ring to give her 30% airborne, so hopefully she does a little bit more damage now. Alright, so let me jump back into here. I had to take a break, and this is the next day going back through this, but basically where I left off, I realized Parfait didn't have an airborne amp, so I gave her that. So I believe lastly the thing that we needed to cover was the Celestial amp, and that's covered by my Tea House Elm. This definitely wouldn't be possible without her giving that 30% damage up. So just to recap, I have multiple forms of damage up to dark enemies. Whenever Parfait's action skill goes off, it gives 40% up from everyone else's 30%. Agitation Dark does not do anything in this fight since Uchi does not deal dark damage. Alright, now that I've covered up the damage up skill components, it's important to also go through your buff effects. Now there's not every single buff in this category, which I hate that they haven't added everything yet. Like Sure Shot still is not in here, which definitely should be one. Having to memorize your Sure Shots can be tricky. But my Sure Shot is V Senna, if I hadn't already stated that. As long as she's action skilling once every 3 turns, well, actually it's 4 because she boons it right after. Also, just a good note to give is that the order of operations for an action skill starts from top to bottom. So when V Senna casts her action skill, the damage up, the Shadow Clone, and the Sure Shot occur first, and then those buffs get booned, which basically makes these the top 3 buffs 4 turns. The attack 30% up only lasts 3 turns because it comes after the boon. So if you ever see an all ally boon and the boon is the first thing, that is as weak as it can get because it's not applying all the buffs and it's only booning currently existing buffs. Alright, but back to other buff effects that are important. Always try to have Embolden. Embolden is the strongest damage dealing stat in the game if you're using gold frame heroes, and Lif covers Embolden. My Lofen is not A5, she is A3, so she does not have Embolden yet. If Lofen were A5, she could have Embolden, and basically an A5 Lofen is one of the strongest things in the game. Easily one of the strongest parallels in the game, only contested by PDL herself. And if you have A4 Lofen, you can even light element shred Uchi 30% more. If you're bringing Lofen at all, be sure you are using the boon on her A1 because you need to counter the ill omen. So another good thing to note is that Grace is also very strong here. The only thing that Uchi does to you that ignores Grace is the ill omen itself, thus reducing your buff turn count. But all the other CC on the second bar can be ignored by either Omega or Grace. So making sure you have a Grace somewhere in the party is very good. All ally Grace 3. That means every time that they're getting hit by a potential CC, instead they use one charge of the Grace. And this on Grace self effect, this is for every ally who has Grace. This self effect does not go back to the Grace giver. It is on the one who received Grace. So every ally gets this to themselves when their Grace charges are used. Going back to the Embolden, just to cover that, because I jumped over to Lofen, but Embolden is the strongest damage bonus in the game when you are using gold frame heroes. Now, if you're only purple 5 or red 1 or red 2, it has much less effectiveness. But once you are full gold on your team, that's when Embolden really shines. Now, I do not bring a light reverberation here. The only thing that would help with is if the reverberation candidate was receiving buffs from their kit that are not given to the rest of the party. So let's say Dawn's Lightbury here was giving himself some buff, like let's say I didn't cover Light Ring and he was giving it to himself. If he cast Light Reverberation, he would be giving Light Ring to the rest of the party at half of the turn duration. So Reverberation is a very strong effect in certain scenarios when you're not able to cover something on an all ally anyway. But I don't use it here, didn't need it, because Parfait gives pretty much every light buff to all allies for as long as I need it. Ripple, Resonance, and Ring. This is the core right here. Any ring increases that element's damage by 50% and also allows you to heal while you deal damage. Light Resonance increases the element damage up for each element hero of that type up to a maximum of 50, so with 5 light units, you get the max bonus. Now, I could be wrong in the ripple effect, but to my understanding, even if there's only one target, Light Ripple means that that one target gets hit twice with any action skill or auto skill that are of the right element. The wording on this is very obscure, and for the longest time I believed that it only affected some other target on the battle. However, the use of Parfait in this fight alone leads me to believe that this double hits a single target if there's only one on the battle, because I've done other tests without Parfait and where I lose Light Ripple and the damage is just not there. Alright, so after that, Stack Up. Should be able to easily cover Stack Up if you bring Liv. Stack Up just increases your damage for every type of buff that you have in effect. So all stats buffs are very strong because it gives that damage up for each stat. Each flat stat counts as 1 towards it. And so basically every other buff that you're stacking, Light Ripple, Resonance, Ring, etc., damage ups, you name it, Stack Up is giving extra damage towards this. And I believe it's at the scale of 1% damage increase per each buff applied. Another note that Agitation Physical actually doesn't do anything here because Uichu deals non-type damage. It is just flat damage. It's not physical, it's not magical, it's non-elemental. So none of the agitations work. Neither Agitation Dark, Physical, or Magical. But this buff still gives you an extra % damage if with Stack Up applied. Alright, so we already know Resonance and Ring are covered. They also don't have Ripple here, I guess. That's just, you know, whatever. We know Grace is done by Lofen, so checking Resolute is also very important. Resolute allows you to crit. Yes, there are crits in Valkyrie, and actually I do not cover Resolute. However, there are gears with Resolute. They are few and far between. If you have them, you definitely need to be slotting them in somewhere. I don't think I have any here because they're so rare to find ones with light damage as well, but I mean, this is Juno's gear, and look at those all ally buffs. That is crazy. That's 6 different buffs for Stack Up, and then a 7th one for herself. I'm just gonna note this out while I have it pulled up here. Akashic Machina is so powerful. I wish I had farmed more of this, but since this opener is an all stats, this will stack with any constant all stats or stats up that you have. Typically a turn of a battle is about 5 seconds, so for 145 seconds or 2.4 minutes, I am nearly 30% stronger for all my stats. This will stack with a 50% all stats constant if I get it. In between Midday Testament giving Matak 30 and Ren's Hair Accessory giving Matak 30, I have Matak covered up to 50%. So with Matak at 50% and all stats at 29%, that's an extra 29% Matak. So my Matak opener at the beginning of the battle for the first 2.4 minutes is actually 79% Matak up. Alright, so no Resolute. Much more typical buffs that you'll see very often now are Shadow Clone, Master, and Frenzy. If you don't have these covered, probably best to find a way. So V Senna gives Shadow Clone on AS, and it's also booned, very nice to 4 turns. Let's check my All Ally Master, and Lofin covers it somehow. See, that's the thing. Lofin's coverage is only to herself for the first 3 turns, unless it's on an Ascension condition, which I don't think so. Yeah, no Master to All Ally. So, we have others to check as well. It's not on the All Ally component. It's not on an Ascension. Yeah, so Parfait's Master coverage is also to herself on an opener. Tea House Elm does not cover it on All Ally. Her coverage is also likely on her opener, which it's actually because of the shared alternative synergy that she gets it from Lofin. You can also add in sneaky little alternative synergy usage in your composition to do stuff like this. And finally, Lif definitely does not have Master on All Ally, but she does give it to 3 allies with highest attack. So this is my most consistent application of Master to the team. So it's given to the 3 with the highest attack, which is going to be Tea House Elm at 53k, Lif at 47k, and as far as the third target, it's going to go to Vindicator Senna because she has an awakening, thus all of her stats are a little bit better than the other 2. So every time Lif action skills, she will give herself, Tea House Elm, and Vindicator Senna Master for 3 turns. That's a good consistent application throughout the fight. And we just saw that Lif also does the same for Frenzy Quick to the 3 of highest Matak. So the 3 center girls are getting Frenzy and Quick every time Lif action skills. Senna will give Frenzy Opener to all allies for 5 turns at the beginning of the battle. Even just having it on an opener is better than not covering it at all. And Tea House Elm has some sort of Frenzy as well. And Tea House Elm covers the Frenzy on all allies. So I have a constant Frenzy application, a constant Master application to 3. And now finally, I'll check. We don't even have basic Quick on here. That's really strange too. Anyway, Quick is much easier to apply and Lif gives it to the 3 magic girls anyway. But that being said, that's what you need to do when you go through here and look. You need to know that your team is providing as many members as possible with as many buffs as possible. That also keeps your stack up stronger as well, the more buffs you have. So these 3, I have some form of permanent application throughout the fight every time somebody action skills. And between gear like Lif's SP, she can give back 3 Master for 1 turn. And if it so happens that Lofin or V Senna action skills when she applies that, we'll get a cheesy extra turn from the boon on it. As long as Uchi doesn't instantly ill omen the Master before I get the chance to boon it. And also covers Quick on 2 turns, so that one's much likely more to stay permanent with a boon and not get dropped off from ill omen. That's the kind of stuff, those are the steps that you should be taking to go through when you're gearing and building the team. You want to be abusing one element's type, and if you have a progenitor, definitely use them. I highly recommend Asgard for any light abuse teams. If you haven't pushed your Asgard, I would say light abuse is probably the strongest elemental abuse in the game right now, just because of how strong characters like Lofin are, how we were able to obtain multiple copies of Parfait for free through this collab, and everybody has their Lif. So with all that being said, I'm just gonna go do a run through it just to show you, and hopefully Parfait does a little bit more damage now that she actually has the airborne amp. I'll probably speed up the battle though, so let's get into it. Now for that action skill, my limit burst was not available yet, but for the second one, I'm gonna animation cancel it with V Senna's burst to apply Blade Guru. I didn't go over Blade Guru, but you definitely should be trying to add that into your team as well. It just makes the damage so much better. It's an extra Berserk and Quick on top of existing Berserk and Quick, as long as your HP threshold does not drop below 50%. And we know that her action skills will be coming faster now that she has Divine Wings. and the 5th one. So now her Divine Wing should be reset again and action skills will slow down, but she still gets to apply Feint to herself for 3 turns. So there's the first bar down in 1 minute and 15 seconds. I don't need to APOC burst again since Blade Guru will still be applied. And if you're ever curious about that, you can come over here and open up the side panel and see your buff overlay. Now, I don't even know what most of these are, but I think the sword is Blade Guru. There you go, there's Uichi in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. 420. That's ironic because my first clear was actually faster before Parfait had 30% airborne amp, so RNG man, RNG. As you can see, even at A3, Lofin is insane. Stack all those buffs on her and she will do magic. Let's see all what I got here. Some random shards, her awakening stones, her enlightenment unlock, ooh, proto star and boost. Oh, sick. So you just have to keep farming her to max her out and roll potions. That's awesome. I got some work to do, folks. Okay, so with all that being said, here's a nice, pretty, clear Heroic Wanderer realm. It's all bright and happy now. There's one last thing I wanted to go over in this video, and it's a quick spreadsheet that I put together for my ranked usage. Alright, welcome to the Master VC Excel file. This thing is old. Okay, but here's the deal. So I went through my little credit screen and added up all the times that I used a hero. So in total, I used 71 heroes to beat Heroic Wanderer. And out of those heroes, I would guess that like 45 to 50 were used as Omega. And no, I don't remember which ones are not Omega. You can pause it here, take a look over. I will, I'll talk about a few things and a few notes that I had in mind anyway. My top 4 usage were Lofin, PDL, Jubride San, and Gunlod. There are 9 realms in total, including Uichi, so for them to be brought to 8, that means they were pretty much brought to every single one except one. Lofin was not used for Acer just because poor little girl gets shut down. DL actually was brought to Acer. I didn't bring her to Uchi. Jubride-san is only not brought to Uchi. You can bring her to Celestial because Ilanol does not CC Acer. And Gunlod was brought everywhere. She goes to Therian I don't remember where she goes to Therian, but dude, she's Gunlod. She doesn't care. That being said, my other most important people were the people brought to 7 of the 9 realms. That'd be Mariana, King Hell, P. Loki, and regular Lif. Mariana and King Hell being some of the primary ranged row amps in the game. It is so important to have ranged row amps. Most of those organisms are in the ranged row. Stuff like Managarm is full ranged row. Gariad is full ranged row. Auster's full ranged row. You get the point. There's a lot of stuff in the ranged row. You need that ranged row amp. P. Loki, magic row amp. There's so many magic bosses too. And most of the time, if they're a magic row boss, 2 of those organisms are in the magic row and 2 are in the ranged row. And regular Lif was probably brought to everything except Acer, and then I don't know what other realm she wasn't brought to, but probably just didn't feel like slotting her in. Oh my goodness. Excuse me. Why did I leave her over there? That's not how that was supposed to go. Sorry if that triggered anybody. Goodness gracious. Alright, so that being said, this is basically Footy's PvE tier list. If you have these heroes in the first column here, I found them to be insanely important, being brought to half or more of the Heroic Wanderer realms for my first clear. Well, I won't say my first clear. I first cleared a lot of these with other teams, but that was because some of them were here over 2 years ago. And a lot of the earlier realms like Nordicia, I never had to go back and update my teams, so that's a main reason why something like Integrated Lif is only brought once. I didn't need to go back and change a lot of my teams. items. I already had most of the stuff cleared before I acquired her. Okay, but anyway, yeah, if you've got somebody here, they are insanely strong in PvE, and that doesn't mean that they're weak in PvP. Most of them are still amazing in PvP as well. These people, I would say, are core PvE. So strong. Cannot praise them enough. Even Elsan still being here is insane. Elsan is so old. So is Vindicator Hell. And people ask me all the time when they have the new beginner summon, who should I pick? The answer is always between Elsan or V-Hell. And honestly, I'm steering people towards Elsan more because the all ally 30% skill gauge is just too important to not have, especially early game. She will accelerate your story and all this other stuff, make connect bosses so much easier. V-Hell really shines with that dark APOC burst, so it just skyrockets your dark team's ability to do damage. That being said, just because these other heroes are used less doesn't mean they're any weaker. I mean, yeah, some of them are a little bit, but where they're used is insane. Like Catalyst Speed, for example, she's a more basic all ally sure shot to acquire. So Speed is actually one of the best heroes you can use for HW Speed herself, because you need sure shot to get through the enemy Speed's feint. Fashionista Raspy is amazing for Reneka. Like, I probably wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't have Gunlod, PDL, and Raspy as my Earth core there. Cerulean Beast Eikthrunir, he is amazing, but he most of the time needs to be a mega. He can provide all ally immunities to Brand and something else, I believe, that is so helpful. Tea House Waitress Sortitia, she was huge when I picked her up because she covers range and grounded amps, so I needed her for Managarm. Like, there was no way I was getting around Managarm without Tea House Waitress Sortitia. Same deal with Tea House Waitress Elm. She's just so good. After I changed my teams around to have to deal with Celestial Tier 2, she was one of the main reasons why I was still able to do Scorpio. Scorpio is extremely difficult and very bulky if you're not dealing with her correctly. My other solution to Scorpio after Tier 2 Celestial was Cry Andry. If you were here in that collab and you got his enlightenment and you happen to get some free frames on him, don't sit on him. I did, and I hated myself for the longest time because I got stuck on Scorpio again after I had Tier 2 Celestials cleared. Cry Andry was the answer. I promise. He's got that melee row amp on his enlightenment. It's really good. Genius Girl Genis. She's been available for free for so long. Do not sleep on her. I've preached her before when she's available for free. Don't sleep on her. I've got her G3 Omega because the girl deserves it. She was my answer to Scorpio's organisms at the very beginning. Dancer Luteal. Anybody can get her. She is amazing. Bring her to the Jotun realm. I believe it's Kari. And then there's somebody else. Like, Luteal's skill gauge acceleration and amps are just insane. They're so spicy. She doesn't need to be Omega for the few fights that I brought her to. And as we all know, I've just gone over White Dog Parfait, dude. Ateam pretty much just gave her out pseudo for free with the hero tickets from the Valkyrie community event with the Chain Soldier 2 collab. Now, the only thing that I dislike is that it does not tell you that it's giving you roll potions and her ascension when you're pulling dupes of her. It only tells you that you're getting hero souls and boost. But if you haven't picked your free heroes from that, and if I could go back and tell people what I would recommend now, it would be to grab 4 copies of White Dog Parfait so you can get her to A4 to use her how I did in Uchi, and then you grab 1 copy of Bring Azure Mimir, which I actually didn't even bring on the list because I didn't need to go back and change my HW Mog team, but Azure Spring Mimir got both of the amp types for Mog. It's Jotun and grounded amps, so she's so good. She can go non-Omega too. She basically makes your EX Mog so much easier. Yeah, and also don't sleep on Haunted Fairy Leaflet. I believe it was Envy I used her initially before I switched over to more fire and water damage, but she can go to that non-Omega and she ignores barriers on like a triple hit. You can purchase her for like 100 odd souls. She's one of the best odd souls purchased in the game. Speaking of odd souls purchases, Cool Beauty Brunhild, I would say, is the #1 odd souls purchase you can make in the game. If you do not have CBB on your account, you are doing something wrong, or you haven't been listening to me preach in enough videos yet. Dark Gentleman Claude. This guy is a Chad. If you didn't slack on him and you got his frames up, these two here can basically duo Creamy in Human Realm. Dude, Claude just trivializes her. And Fashion Forward Chihaya is way stronger than you think. She's such an underrated hero. especially for being pretty much given out for free. Silvercat Chelsea, another pseudo free hero that has embolden. That's very important. Another call out, Wild Rose Volfa, insanely important for much later game. I needed her for Filzius for my full Earth team because yes, she only applies male amp to the back 3, but she also gives herself Earth Reverberation, which shares it to any other Earth member. So you can get male amp on the Earth units in slots 1 and 2 with her because she does Earth Reverberation for all of her buffs to other Earth units. Alright, so there you go. This is Footy's official PvE tier list. If you have any of these heroes, level them. Chances are you will be using them for Heroic Wander. So people, without further ado, I've got some farming to do. So until next time everybody, Foots out. Cheers.